Hello and welcome everyone to Ananke's Literature Festival 2026. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome our distinguished panelists for the seventh edition of this event, Nadia, Naima, and Farah. I'm saying all these names as I see them displayed on the screen. A little bit about the panel first, and then the speakers. Our panel today is Beyond the Burden of Representation, Craft, Form, and Artistry in South Asian Writing. A little bit about the panel. For decades, South Asian literature in the global publishing sphere has been flattened into sociological explanations expected to serve primarily as a window into trauma, migration, or cultural heritage. But identity is not a substitute for literary form. This panel brings together South Asian authors, translators, and editors to discuss how prioritizing rigor in craft, experimentation with syntax, structure, voice, and genre acts as an act of resistance. By refusing to let their work be reduced to forced representation, these writers reclaim the right to be read, judged, and celebrated first and foremost as masters of their uh, art. Um, Welcome, everyone. A little bit about all of you in alphabetical order. Farah Ali is the writer of the novels Telegraphy and the River, The Town, and the short story short story collection People Want to Live. Her work has been anthologized in the Pushcart Prize and Best Small Fictions and has appeared in Shenandoah, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Farah, Shenandoah, Kenyan Review, Ecotone, Virginia Quarterly Review, and elsewhere. She is the co-founder of Lakir and an editor at Wasafiri. Welcome, Farah. Naima Rashid is an author, poet, and translator whose work was longlisted for the National Poetry Competition and Best Small Fictions. She has published 3 critically acclaimed works of translation from Urdu and French into English. Her most recent work is the poetry collection Sum of Worlds, published by Yoda Press in 2024. Her writings have been widely published in reputed journals like Asymptote, The Scores, and Wild Court. She has taught translation with the universities of Oxford and Bristol and with the collective Shadow Heroes, among others. Welcome, Naima. Nadia Kabir Barb is a British Bangladeshi writer and journalist and the author of Truth and Dare by Renard Press, a collection of short stories. Her work has appeared in international literary journals and anthologies, and she was longlisted for the Britport Prize Peggy Chapman Andrews First Novel Award and The Next Big Story. Truth or Dare was also a finalist at the Islands Book Awards. She holds a BA from SOAS and an MSc from the London School of Economics and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She has worked in health and development sector in both the UK and Bangladesh. Welcome, Nadia. So let's start with, the first question, which is about, de-exoticizing the narrative, resisting the explanatory impulse where, the mechanics of prose as boundary against performative art are, core uh, to what we are going to talk about. And Western publishing historically has pressured the diaspora. First of all, has it in all your experience, how has it pressurized the diaspora and regional writers into translating their cultural context for an outside audience?
Shall I go?
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's actually a really good question because I think it's as a writer, it's something that I think we struggle with because when you're writing in English, I'm a British Bangladeshi writer, but I write in English, you have to figure out who am I writing for? It is, I would hope that it's for, it's my audience is global. So it's not just Western audiences, but people around the world who will read my work in English. But I am also a Bangladeshi writer, so I want to have my cultural context in there. Otherwise, my writing loses any texture or any nuance. And so I think when I first started writing, I did sort of, go for the whole italicized, words that were in Bengali. But over the years, I've decided that actually I don't need to and I don't want to because I think readers are very discerning. And they really do, they can infer from context. You don't have to translate everything. You don't have to have a glossary of words. And I think it actually detracts from the writing. If for me, it does. This is a personal choice completely. And, I know different writers have different views about, how they want to use glossaries or italics. But I don't want to because I think that when I read, I want to be immersed in the story. I don't want to be taken out of it because there's words in italics, and I'm reminded, oh yes, this word is not, meant to be here. This is meant to be in a different language. Whereas, I think writers try to give context to what they're writing. So if I've got a word in Bengali, or it's, let's use the word shalwar kameez. We all write shalwar kameez, but you write in such a way that this is, some form of clothing or garment. It's not food, and it's not, we're not talking about something else. And so I think it's all about context. And I think writers are very good at giving context to their work. And if you actually think about it, why are we expected constantly to have to translate things? Or almost, I don't like to use the word dumbing down, but it's almost like, why can't we use words? Because I've read so many novels which are French words. I am not fluent in French, but I can read it and I can get an understanding of what we're talking about. I read books, which might have a little bit of, if you're, sort of science in there. I'm not a physicist, I'm not a chemist, but if I read things, I can understand what they're talking about. They don't give you a sort of explanation somewhere else. Oh, by the way, this is what, talking about. You sort of understand, I would think, from what you're reading. So I don't know. I feel like as a South Asian writer, I don't want to be confined by these kind of, constraints, and that I should be able to write how I want to write. And I think it also gives somebody reading it from maybe a different culture, a little bit of sort of you get a taste of Bangladeshi culture, Bangladeshi society, the food we eat, our sensibilities. But if I'm constantly trying to sort of anglicize it, then I think you lose that to a certain extent. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah. You know what? And I'm playing the devil's advocate here. When you're reading um some work and there's a phrase in French or Italian, for me, sometimes I really want to, check it out, what it's about. And, I'm really interested and, I Google it or so what I'm trying to say is, yes, we are talking about, the diaspora being pressurized. But on the other hand, as a reader, there are times that I want to I really wish there was a glossary or, does it have to be like, maybe it should be a writer's prerogative,
exactly.
have it or not? What do you
Exactly. It's a
think?
choice. It's a choice by the writer, whether you want to or you don't want to have a glossary or italicized words or a translation. Sometimes I'm sure you know that, you write a word or something in a different language, whether it's Urdu or, Bengali or French or whatever, and then you have a translation sort of, flowing next to it, which also writers do. I think if it's a sentence, then it's harder to contextualize because then you don't know what the sentence means unless you're very clear in the next sentence
Yeah.
what you're referring to. If it's a word here and there, then I think, for me, I don't tend to. I just kind of like to give my readers sort of an understanding of where actually this conversation is about, whatever it is. And then so you infer from that that this is what this person has said. And then as a writer, you have to kind of work with that. I
Yeah.
mean, I agree. You can't just leave it so that you've got a huge sentence or, paragraph and nobody knows what you're talking about. That obviously would take you out of the story because you're like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. Naima?
Uh, yeah, so I agree with what Nadia is saying 100%. And in response to what you asked her, I think the issue here is that as people coming from a certain region, it's the burden of always being the one explaining that is oppressive. And when you travel to a foreign country, you do not understand all the signposts, right? But there are enough cues in the context to point you if you have half a brain. And also, there's a thing called mystery. Even when you're reading a work or when you're traveling, you do not understand 100% of the things, and that's part of the pleasure. It's okay. You can let some things be unexplained. So I think in response to your question, the issue is to resist against over facilitating for the white reader, because what are we
Yes.
ultimately, who are we explaining for? We are explaining for the white reader or the white publisher. So that's the instinct here. And Nadia has gone over very well over this point of, over exoticizing or, sorry, exoticizing or over explaining. And in addition, I think there's another kind of oppression, which is that we're expected, as coming from a certain region, to write and pull the entirety of our subjects and themes from very narrow buckets of contents, once again, which are basically responding to a Western appetite for stories coming from a certain part of the world. I think this recent controversy with the Commonwealth Short Story
Yeah.
Prize, I think it raised some very interesting and thorny questions about what a Western audience expects from stories from the Caribbean or Asia, etc. So they're very reductive, exoticized stereotypes of landscape, imagery, people and their professions. And I think that is the oppression that we're fighting against when we're
Yeah.
writing or translating, and resisting that urge to always be the brown person who is over eager to please the white person or the white reader. That's the heart of the matter, I feel.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we were doing this session with Meena Kandasamy the other day, and it's on censorship and code. And she was talking about the exact same things, that there are certain tropes or certain things that the Western audience, the Western reader, and the Western publisher, that's what they want. So I'll ask you that question, Farah, as well, from an editor perspective as well, that uh, you know talking about the same question, but is this some sort of like a censorship? And I really love your cat. See, Nadia.
Yeah. I locked my two cats out because
Yeah.
I thought, oh God, you're going to see two tails going past.
And I said it would be really nice, but
Sorry, I think this cat has ambitions to go to the left. Sorry about the
no, no, no,
feline interruption.
no, no.
Yeah,
We like feline.
love it.
So, as an editor, I happen to edit journals or work as at journals, jahan pe, at Lakir, we're all about showcasing work from Pakistan or by writers connected to Pakistan. So we're anyway from the get-go all about not italicizing. And a small note here is the other day I saw an article in the news, which is a newspaper out of Pakistan. They have a fiction section, and I was amazed to see कि उन्होंने, like in their newspaper, they've italicized Urdu words, and I thought that was really funny because it's a publication from Pakistan. So I was like, you're italicizing your own selves. But anyway, so at either journal, the policy is not to italicize non-English words. So taking that point forward, the italicization itself, it's either a house rule of the publication or it's, if it's a house rule, then it applies across the board, whether they're italicizing Urdu or Bengali or Italian, French, whatever words. If it's not, and as a non, like a South Asian person is asked to italicize their work, then obviously that is totally incorrect. But I think before we even enter into what they expect us to explain, etc., is the question of what they accept as publishing. And here I don't mean journals. I find journals to be far more open to work coming out of South Asia, because I think the sensibility generally is they're more open to ideas, more open to different cultures, whatever. But publishers of books, they're the ones who shy away from certain angles. And a different take or aspect of them not accepting work is that it doesn't fit their ideas of what a work from that region should look like. And this is a far bigger problem than language or cultural contexts. For example, at Lakid, when we receive work, we're constantly stunned by the angles that the writers sitting back home are taking on issues that are deeply political, but the way they're approaching them, it's not black and white. It's not in the same formula way of here's political strife and oh no, and here's a solution or something. So it's much more nuanced. It takes in so many other factors. It's just beautifully complex. That's the kind of work that I've not seen Western publishers generally accept or promote from writers writing from South Asia. There are a few odd publishers here and there, mostly independent presses, that do take a chance, and it just comes down to the editor, honestly, what their reading taste is, what their reading experience is, how widely read they are, etc., how they view the market. But generally, if you look at the works published by South Asians, anyway, they're very few. Of the works accepted, it's very few. Of the works that are published, it's like such a negligible amount of, if you look at a pie chart, the works coming out of by writers from South Asia are very few in number compared to all the rest. If you look at the Booker long list right now, it's very, like, they did their good deed for the international Booker check mark. Now they're like, goodbye.
Yeah, we're done.
We're done.
Although, get back to your place.
We've done our farz. So, oh my God, the return of the cat. So he's like, I'm going to be part of all Zoom calls. But of the fraction of the work published by South Asians, it's all very similar-ish, so to speak. And it's not to say कि वो बुरा है by per se, but there's such a bigger variety of works still out there. I would say there's Mahreen Sohail, who did actually get good acclaim for her short story collection, Small Scale Sinners. She published out of the US, I think this year. But still, I don't know. I don't think she's been published out of the UK, and I struggle to wonder. I mean, I struggle with the reasoning why, because she's a really great writer. But she was published out of a small press out of the US. There's Taiba Maya Kamal. So there are writers who are getting published, but by smaller presses, and then they don't get attention to the scale that our marquee writers tend to.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've taken your question and gone off on a whole tangent, Sabine. So I'll let the others take it over now.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I was thinking, you're talking about the West as well. Even here, if I want to get a book from India, it is such a hassle. And I'm talking about independent publishing. I wanted this book, A Tilt in Time by Fatma Rizvi. because we are having a conversation with Fatma Rizvi, and she's translated Kurutul and Heather's book, and I can't get it. So apart from the fact that, publishers, the Western publishing landscape, pick and choose, uh, whatever we have, on the table. I mean, it's not even on the table. Uh, so, what do you think of this issue? This is a distribution issue which everyone laments about. Naima?
Yeah, I think the distribution issue is a natural extension of the bias in the market. Works which are considered more saleable, more exciting, and more palatable for certain audiences, they will always be in currency, they will always be in print. As an example, uh, when, in the context of translation, so Manto is one of the most translated writers, and every 2, 3 years we have new collections of Manto, and they are always in print. You go to the market and you ask for a collection of Manto stories and translation, you will always have those available. And I was telling my students the other day that, we have a tendency to equate frequency and omnipresence with quality.
Yeah.
But actually, the reason behind Manto always being in print and always being available, the reasons are very pragmatic. His work is out of copyright, it's easy. So, and it always, I mean, it's a money spinner. So publishers have a vested interest in always signing on new Manto translations. But if you think about it, it's very irresponsible to not question that and to simply accept that as a statement for your taste, because basically what that means is that somebody like Manto, he's brilliant, no doubt, but I mean, for God's sake, there are so many other brilliant writers in Urdu, so many other writers. Like, for example, when I translated Parveen Shakir in 2019, I was shocked to see that, but I mean, it's Parveen Shakir, everybody knows her. But I was shocked to see that there wasn't a single consolidated translation published by a reputed press. Similarly, John Elia. आई मीन एवरीबडी ही सो पॉपुलर, मगर उसकी एक भी कंसोलिडेटेड ट्रांसलेशन नहीं थी, अब आ रही है। और रीजन ये है कि इट्स नॉट कि उनकी क्वालिटी कम है काम की या दे हैव एनीथिंग लेस इंपॉर्टेंट टू से, इट्स जस्ट के challenges बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. I know that the translator who's translating John Elia, he spent years fighting for the rights because family history बड़ी complicated है, and that is also part of the struggle that translators go through. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, just because something is available, and I think taste is another thing that we need to reclaim.
Yeah.
अभी ये जो कंट्रोवर्सी का जिक्र किया, हम ग्रांटा को होली ग्रेल मानते हैं, हम ये कॉमनवेल्थ शॉर्ट स्टोरी प्राइज को हम इतनी easily we give them the power कि they decide. But sorry, are they worthy of deciding? No. Are they discerning for our stories? No. They chose stories that were practical jokes. No person from that remote region of Asia could, I mean, दूसरे paragraph तक, if your radar is not like beeping like mad, something is wrong with your taste. बट हम लोगों ने पावर दे दिया है कि चलिए ग्रांटा न्यूयॉर्कर में पब्लिश होने का मतलब है कि योर एजेंट कैन फाइट फॉर यू, योर पब्लिशर कैन कंसिडर कि it's automatically going to be a success. But no, I think the question marks need to be placed at these levels of taste markers. किसके पास power है taste declare करने का? We have to take back that power. So yeah, just because something is available does not mean that it's in good taste or written in good taste or of high quality. And as a reader, as a writer, as a translator, we always have the power to reclaim that.
And
I just,
yeah,
can I
please
just,
go
sorry,
on.
just
Yeah.
on what you're saying, Naima, I agree. Because I think what happens is that we find that literary agents here, at least I find in the UK and publisher, they're the gatekeepers of what goes out, what is published. And they have this view that, if you're a South Asian writer, that you will, you're just not what I hear. And I've had this myself, is that, oh, we love this, but we don't know how to market it. It's just that is the stumbling block. How are we going to market it? And the thing is that I think, that is where the barrier is. It's this whole, oh, we don't know how to market it. And therefore, what you're doing is you're then being pushed back into this sort of stereotyping. If you write this, we can market it. If you write that, sorry, We can't. And so, and also even if you have been published, unless you're a big name, even in bookshops, you will find that you will not see books stocked in bookshops. Yeah, they'll be available online on different, whether it's Waterstones or here, but actually getting physical copies is also really hard because the bookshops, decide as well. Bookshops as well will decide that, oh, we might keep one copy. Now, I'm going to ask you if you have one copy of a book, which is in a bookshop, in a large bookshop in a shelf, nobody's going to ever find that book unless you're specifically going looking for that book, or you're saying, oh, I want to find a South Asian author, and therefore this is under South Asian authors, because it just gets lost in the thousands of books on the bookshelf. And so I think we're not given enough, I think, credibility almost that we can sell books or people will read our stories. I think that's where I think part of the problem is. It's almost as if our stories are not worthy to be put out there. So, I mean, I don't know. That's what I feel from, not just me, from other authors. I've spoken to so many writers and they've literally the same stumbling block. Don't know how to market you.
Yeah, which brings us back to the same question of taste. If the reader
Yeah.
is discerning, they will know that, which books to look out for. Also, Nadia, we don't know how to market is code for so many other horrible things that
Yeah.
nobody wants to say or hear. So, yeah. Um, yeah.
Do you think taste is being curated by the publishing landscape, because the publishing landscape is governed by these big publishers, and taking an example, and I may be going off topic here. I watched the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. So, okay, I'm a big fan of the Odyssey and the Iliad and the Aeneid and, the Anne Hathaway and, and Christopher Nolan and all that. But it was underwhelming for me. For a lot of people, it's not, because how it's being, I love the cinematography and all that. So taking cue from that, do you think, and I may be wrong, okay, so about the Odyssey, but that's just my view, but do you think taste is being curated and created, and through different mechanics, power mechanics? Farah, I'll go with you
I
first.
mean, publishing houses and the ecosystem of that with the newspapers and the magazines that have covered what books come out, etc. That's been there forever, not just recently. It's just how things are. And I think some of it is inevitable. But I think this segues back to what Naima said earlier, why we consider certain things the holy grail of taste or quality or standard. Yes, they publish the odd good story, but I've seen a lot of really boring stuff from both the New Yorker and Grant, and I'm like, what's the freaking big deal here?
Yeah.
So I think now the conversation should move away from centering those places, even in calling out criticisms of them, because I think a lot of us, at least most of us, are aware of their own flaws. So the convo should move away from that toward more actionable things, like how do we ourselves make ourselves the center of distribution or consolidate our abilities, our own resources. I mean, it's not like we lack them. Um, we just have to figure out how to work together as a consortium or something. There are independent publishers in South Asia. Uh, there's a lot of range of experience. There are people interested in having their works easily available outside of things that they can't control, like the politics, for example. But generally, our own ecosystem of getting our stuff reviewed by each other, not as not in an mutual admiration way, but in a critical way. So we have people to do that, but I think we should work out how to get that going. You know, Ananke is a good example. It's a place that curates its own voices and its own panels. Um, and the journals that are published out of South Asia are another example. So we just have to figure out on a bigger level how to talk about ourselves with ourselves and look to each other as standards, increase our own standards, etc. And I mean, all of us, each of us here is doing pretty badass stuff, but we need to continue doing that, I think. And the more we talk about ourselves, I think that the less important the other players in the scene will become. And it's not gay, we want to be the next tastemaker or something, because again, that's very gatekeepy. But we just want to not have the other parties who've forever been central to the conversations that central anymore. Or we can say to hell with them. It's okay. Are we looking for global influence? Are we looking for an influence limited to a continent? What are we looking for? What are our goals here? So I think it's time to do more action-oriented things.
Can I add to what Farah said?
Yeah, please.
I think Farah, what you're saying, and that reimagining of a literary landscape that decenters the white reader and the white publisher, it hinges on our definition of what it means to have made it as an author.
Yes.
And I think, if I'm honest with myself, until very recently, in my own mind, I realized, and I think this controversy of the Granta thingy, it sealed it for me, because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, if my book is not published in the US and the UK, then I haven't really made it. But why?
Yeah.
And the other point that you mentioned, Farah, it's so critical, which is community. Why don't we have our own network of responsible, intelligent, engaged, critical reviewers? I remember some years ago there was a brilliant poetry collection published by a young poet from Pakistan, and I was waiting for a review for like a year or so. It was published in the US by a small press, of course, because it was a poetry collection, and not a single publication in Pakistan carried a review. And although even if you were to look at it from a very shallow and superficial perspective, it was published in the US, so
Yeah.
that person made it. So yeah,
Yeah.
they should have published it. But this is how we are, this is how neglectful we are when our own authors are published. Uh, why was there not a review? Why is there not an automatic system, an automatic understanding that our literary journals will carry reviews of our own good work?
But there
Because
you
these are
go.
not.
Sorry to interrupt, that's exactly the same. Maybe it's in the same line of the problem as Jo Hamare, like just thinking about Pakistan and the publications that are there. I can think of 3, 4. I mean, Dawn, The News, Friday Times, and it's just too few, and they've been there
Yeah.
forever, and they're still run by the same people. So we need a newer wave of things,
और
of people shaking up and
लिटरेरी जर्नल्स भी तो हैं और ये
True.
कि फरा वंस अगेन ये अगर हमने अपने काम रिव्यू करने हैं अपने राइटर्स के जो आ रहे हैं खास तौर पे जो नए राइटर्स आ रहे हैं आई मीन आई एम ऑल फॉर encouraging and supporting them.
Yeah.
Why are we limited to reviews in Pakistani publications? We can go to South Asian larger site. उसके अलावा बाहर के इतने जर्नल्स हैं. So my point is कि रिव्यूअर्स पहले पैदा तो हों, पहले चार्ज तो लें. वो 3-4 लोग हैं जो 3-4 लोगों के रिव्यूज करते हैं, एंड it's, I don't know, it's boring as hell to read the review space, because the quality of the reviews is pathetic and the selection of works is so narrow. जबकि जो actual published work है, ठीक है, there's always room for improvement, but the actual published range है, it's much wider, much more interesting than the review spaces in those mainstream newspapers or those mainstream literary fests reflects. So अगर serious reviewers हैं तो review करने की spaces बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, I feel.
Mhm.
You guys are giving me an idea to do something, make a collective, we have such a large, thanks to all of you there is such a large network of people, who have built Ananke, with, people like Naima and Farah, Nadia, you've been there, from India as well, from Bangladesh as well. So maybe,
We
let's
need to
talk.
put our heads together and come up with
Exactly,
something.
exactly, exactly. Have some, be something or have something that, well, not challenges it, but, is sort of like an answer to the Booker long list or short list or whatever list there is.
Yeah, but I think we
It
need to
doesn't
put our
have to
heads
be the
together and come up
Booker.
with money solutions for this.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the only, and, that's the only thing that,
Yeah.
is such a big hindrance. So, okay, so coming back to our discussion, let's talk about how structure can reclaim autonomy. When a work is, and I'm reading out this question, when a work is evaluated solely for diversity, the technical genius behind its structure is often overlooked. How do non-linear timelines and storytelling traditions or fragmented perspectives allow South Asian writers to push against conventional Western narrative arcs? The standard three-act hero's journey. How do we reclaim form as an intellectual, artistic choice rather than just a cultural relic? Naima, let's start with you.
I'll start with a very interesting example that falls squarely in the ambit of your question, and I'm lucky that you asked me first, and I had an example ready. I remember when I first started pitching my stories to Western journals. There was a story that I was particularly proud of. It was called Ifat Khala, and I had spent a year and a half, finessing it with my beta readers and trusted friends and all. By friends, I mean friends who were horrible, ruthless critics, not like good friends. So when I was submitting it as an experiment, I think I sent it to like 85 publications, and I did it like over 2, 3 days. I sent 85 pitches for the same story, and so after that, 3, 4 months after that, I was literally every time I would sit down and have my anda paratha for breakfast, there would be a rejection email. So I was literally eating rejections for breakfast. And that was my first experience, trying to get published in a Western journal. And I remember the ridiculousness of some of the responses that I got back from the editors. And that was the first time I realized, oh my God, uh, I'm pitching this to, Western journals, and some of those journals publish excellent work. But these responses, they are so lay because they were hung up on, as you said, the tripartite structure of the beginning, the middle, and the end. And that is, please, it is so expired. I mean, which world are you living in? The concept of time in a South Asian story, the concept of our afternoon, jo ek summer ka time hai, the way time expands. Are you an editor of this excellent literary journal and you cannot understand that this story, the concept of time that is central to the story is reflected in the way the afternoon stretches and the way there is एक खास तरह का childhood जो हम 90s के बच्चों का 80s के बच्चों का childhood था जिसमें time would just stretch because gadgets नहीं थे, and then the
Yeah.
particular arc of the story was कि एक बच्ची का perspective था, and so her childhood days and her observations वो बहुत लंबे तरीके से थी, and then the hitting of reality वो एकदम से snap करती है. And I was just so disappointed that uh, the editors could not understand this very simple treatment of time, and they were hung up on कि ये imbalanced है या इसमें equilibrium नहीं है. So yeah, that was my first realization. And so okay, I've lost track of the question. Yeah, so no, this insistence on the a certain structure of time is so juvenile and amateur. I don't even know. I mean, if somebody is still, insisting on that and editing a top literary journal, I don't know. I don't know what to say about their sensibility as a reader. अभी मैं पढ़ी थी इस पे I was watching, I can't remember the name of the book. There was this author who had written a book जिसमें time का जो concept था, it was in concentric circles based on, this was an African author, based on the tradition of African oral storytelling around a campfire. So अगर टाइम का स्ट्रक्चर आपने टॉप टू बॉटम रखा हुआ है या नीटली सीक्वेंस रखा हुआ है
Yeah.
according to a Western concept of chronology, you are like still living in the Middle Ages. You need to grow up.
Talking about this structure of time की आप बात कर रहे हैं, so I feel time is very fluid. तो जो ये मतलब कि दिस नोशन और नैरेटिव मतलब कि जो पब्लिशर से आ रहा है, आई थिंक दिस इज वेरी ओल्ड स्कूल, और आई मीन एक एक्सपायरी डेट के साथ था जो कि गुजर चुकी है. इवन इफ यू सी मूवी वॉच मूवीज लाइक, अगेन मैं मूवीज की एग्जांपल दे रही होती हूँ, राइन कुगलर्स दैट वैम्पायर
Sinners.
मूवी.
Sinners? Was it
Exactly,
Sinners?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
When one of the protagonists, ठीक है ना, this is a mind fog, but when he starts to sing, and that जो उसमें time की एक fluidity
Beautiful.
दिखाई
Yeah.
है, right? So Naima, I agree with you, because structure, what is structure? Life के अंदर as such कोई structure तो नहीं होता. There is a fluidity, right?
Yeah, और जो Western एक obsession है with productivity, well, the time has a very different meaning in the East. आप जब अभी भी when you go to Pakistan तो आपको लगता है कि everyone has all the time for you in the world, जबकि when you're living in the West, even when you're meeting friends, everything is so strictly timed. अच्छा अभी parking expire हो जाएगी, अभी ये meeting है. So time works differently in these two cultures. If you're not aware of that as a reader, क्या कर रहे हैं आप? What's the quality of your interactions? I mean, what does it mean to be an alert reader, not just a reader of literature, but a reader of human beings? अगर आप interact कर रहे हैं with people from around the world और आपको ये नहीं पता कि time works differently. South Asia में nothing is going to start on time. There's going to be chaos, but it's still going to work. आप UK में जाएंगे या in the West, you have to be present on the dot, otherwise you'll be harshly judged in a room. That is how differently time works. But is one better than the other? No. They're just different modes of being.
Nadia,
Can
you
I
were,
just
yeah.
can I just go back? You were talking about this, the whole three-act structure, and there's the hero's journey. And I think, sometimes I find that also becomes restrictive because as a writer, if we all write to the same structure, then doesn't it become almost formulaic after a while? Because we're all following the same journey of our characters, inciting an, incident, then this, then this, then this, and climax. Whereas I think, you want to write your story the way you envision it, the way you envision, that's how we have richness and diversity. This is the diversity because we're all very different. Even let's say if we take all of us here and we're given the same topic or let's write about this, we're going to all come at it from different angles. We're not all going to start from point A and get to point, X or Z or whatever. We're going to go through different sort of, tangents and trajectories. And I think that's the beauty of literature. It's the fact that we can use our imagination and take our characters on a journey which is not prescribed. Okay, this is, your character has to start at point A, then this has to happen, then this has to happen. I just think otherwise we lose the kind of, the texture and the richness of what literature is all about what storytelling is all about. And like you said, also following this linear path of time, it doesn't work like that. And I think it's a question of, it enhances a story, I think, if the fact that we're all different, we all write differently, we all come at it from different angles. And I do have this problem sometimes when I'm told, does it follow the 3-act, 5-act, whatever structure? And I think, oh my God, I have to now retroactively go and figure out where my story, and as a writer, that's not how I write. And maybe that is going to be my sort of, what shall I say? That's going to hinder my publishing journey. But I don't want to have to fit myself into, like into a pigeonholed into certain things that this is how I have to write. And if it isn't published, then it isn't published. But this is my story. This is how I've written it. And I just don't know. It does feel a bit like there are certain structures and certainly that you need. And South Asian, I think we do have a slightly different way of thinking. I mean, Japanese writers write completely differently. South American writers have a different way of writing. So South Asian writers also have, like you said, the way we view time is very different, and family, how we view family, how we view various, aspects of life. And I think we just, you can't completely homogenize everything and say, okay, this is how you have to write a story. This is, where you have to fit into. So I agree with you, Naima, you know.
You know,
Sorry,
yeah,
जो
go on.
Latin American authors हैं, ल- उनकी राइटिंग में आपको एक खास फ्लेवर नजर आता है. And last year when I was in China, I met a couple of Latin American
Sorry,
authors.
cat got
And
in.
sorry, oh wow, okay. Am I the only person without a cat? I feel so
Yes.
left out.
Oh, you.
Me too.
Okay. Okay, so हाँ, तो मैं कहती तो चाइना में I met some Latin American authors और मैं उनकी personality देख रही थी and I was like, oh my God, the way these people move through the world, it is little wonder their literature has this aspect of, magical realism,
Yes.
because they were only half present in the actual world. They were half somewhere else, and more so than writers in general. So yeah, my point is कि time fluid है, time की जो conception है, the way you act it out, it is based on these, your axes and parameters set a certain way, and that is the beauty of life. That is the beauty of meeting people and reading literature. So yeah, okay, I lost the track of the train of thought again. So
नहीं, लेकिन I do agree with you, both of you. Or Nadia, coming back to you about homogenizing, just दिमाग में बहुत सारी चीजें एक साथ आ रही होती हैं. Do you think this has something to do with taking or अपने कंट्रोल में रखना, like एजुकेशन जैसे था, तो एजुकेशन के अंदर पीपल यूज टू स्टूडेंट्स यूज टू सिट आउटसाइड, और एक कॉन्वर्जेशन होती थी. इवन अगर आप और पहले बात करें, सोक्रेटिस जो है वो बाहर, ऑल ऑब्जर्वेशन एंड डिस्कशन. और फिर हुआ ये कि एक क्लासरूम के अंदर जो है वो बच्चों को बैठ के पढ़ना है. दिस इज हाउ इट हैज टू बी.
Yeah.
So similar way, just to control and homogenize and make it simple, therefore something which will not be subversive or disruptive. Maybe
Yeah.
it's because of that.
It could be. I mean, I think it just simplifies things, like you say, it's easier to lump all of us together. And, and also I find that it's almost like because we are South Asian, we must have the same lived experiences, which we obviously do not have. I mean, I wrote an essay recently, and I was just saying that this whole sort of homogenizing and is very reductive, because even in my own family, I have a brother. We, same family, but our perspectives are different. We have different lived experiences coming from the same home, and so all writers will have different lived experiences, and how they manifest that in their work is going to be different. So like you said, yeah, I think it is a form of control. And also it's just easier to say, oh, this South Asian writer, without, because we all have different sensibilities, whether we're in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They're not all exactly the same. Yes, there are a lot of things that are similar, but there are so many other things. That's the whole. I just find it very sort of sad that all these kind of the nuances of our cultures are trying to be kind of, squashed and flattened, I almost think, because it is actually easier then. I think I was reading somewhere, I think it was Danuta Keen. She was saying that, when as a South Asian writer, publishers like it, and if you sort of you're more marketable, if you, what is it? She said something like, if you up the sari count, so that whole kind of saris and jasmines and mangoes and whatnot, which
roti,
makes us
I
very
was going to say
marketable.
mangoes, by the way.
roti.
Mangoes, right? I mean, I love mangoes,
Yeah.
but You know, if my story requires mangoes, there will be mangoes, but I'm not going to sort of put in, tick boxes. Oh, I've got I've got the arranged marriage, I've got the whatever it is that I need to get myself published. But it's we're all kind of, flattened into this linear almost structure that, where we have to all have the same experience, whereas we have so many different stories to tell. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, and Farah, I would like you to comment on it, but before that, it reminds me of what, again, same conversation with Mina and Zain Said, and Zain was saying, when he was doing his MFA, I think, there were some specific things that, were expected of him when he was doing his writing or his assignments. And, what he said was, nobody expects a South Asian writer to write a Mrs. Dalloway. So what do you think, Farah?
Yeah, I fully agree. And there goes Nadia's cat.
Sorry. He's now locked into my room, so
Good,
somebody
good,
let him in
good,
and close the door.
good.
Mine has decided it's time to sleep on the floor. I'm
Okay.
like, yes, okay. It's like a toddler. You don't want to, move too much so they don't wake up. Um, but yeah, I agree. Nobody wants a South Asian Mrs. Dalloway. Yeah, because again, it comes back to what we said very early on in this conversation, that they expect a certain kind of narrative, a very narrow idea, एक ही तरह की बातें about, what's happening in our homelands, etc. Um, so if you write something which comes at something very differently, it's not marketable. I think it's there's a lot of ways we can parse the reasons of such work not being accepted. And one is that they're not getting it. It's just their own imaginations are so narrow. They might be great editors of works within a very narrow scope, but beyond that, their imaginations fail them. Another reason could be that marketing, the market they have deemed exists, um, they don't think it's going to buy into this kind of work, and then it becomes like a cyclical thing. Uh, they don't push works like that or works that are published occasionally that are different. They're not reviewed. They don't see the limelight unless by some pure fluke they end up on an awards list, But then again, the chances of that are so extremely narrow. I mean, it's a whole problem of what they consider. But I think then we keep coming back to them, right? I think we need to make our own prizes, our own big up our own journals. Like Himal South Asia is such a great journal. It's been around for so long. It's been quietly doing amazing work for a very long time, and they're a paying venue. So, I mean, it says a lot about their tenacity to just keep on doing the good work. They've published um, works by people, Joe, maybe the West picks up years later. Oh, acha, now this is important. Now we're going to pay attention to it. But I think it's just time to figure out our own financials, consolidate our own resources, make our own and long list, short list, and that's a whole different argument about what a prize is important or not, or are they gatekeeping themselves. But I think it's cool for writers to get a little boost. I mean, it's definitely cool if they get a financial boost via a prize, like why the hell not? Though we need to do it on our own home grounds, figure out our own ways of so that we can talk about our own stories with our own editors, with our own team, without having to explain constantly to them or expecting constantly, okay, this is why I have a Pakistani or a Bangladeshi Mrs. Dalloway type story. But then we're always in the position to explain that, and simultaneously we need to maybe get into those spaces ourselves if we are living outside of our homelands, as most of us are, all of us are, in fact, here, then we need to push ourselves into those spaces where we become the leading voice, and very similar to what Toni Morrison did at Random House, right? Like when she became editor there, then a lot of Black voices suddenly she picked up on those. Like that was her project, and it was if she weren't there to do it, we wouldn't have heard of those other writers maybe years later. But we need to be in those places, and at the same time we need to boost it on our own territories, so to speak, not literal territories, but yes, that too. So
Can I just have sorry, Sabine, can I
Go,
just tell
go
you
on.
one, just a little example? I've been writing a story, and I have some fellow writers who kind of, we critique each other's work, and it was interesting. And I sent out my piece, and one of the comments was from an American writer, and she said, lovely things about it, but she said, oh, maybe you could have fewer, characters in your chapter or whatever. And I just thought, I think it's because the names are unfamiliar and because she couldn't remember the names and who people were. And I think it's that is had they been white characters, European characters, American characters, I think that wouldn't have applied, is because my characters were South Asian with South Asian names, that it just felt like, oh, there are a lot of names I need to remember, where actually there weren't that many. But it's just that, that sort of, I'm not familiar with it. Therefore, maybe you need to reduce the number of names. It's like that. It's just simplifying things. Whereas we read books with, multiple characters in a chapter or in a book, and, we don't question, we might question it, but, yeah, it was interesting that I just thought actually it's because the names are unfamiliar. That's, I think, what the issue was.
Naima, would you like
Too
to add?
much processing, too much processing burden on the
Yeah.
white reader. Actually, in response to Zain's comment that nobody expects South Asian to write Mrs. Dalloway, Farah has written telegraphy. Boom. So, so yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that that's a good example of one work that I read recently, which literally flies in the face of any expectations you have of a story written by a South Asian woman, story coming out of South Asia. So, yeah. And who are these? I mean, ये जो prizes हैं जिनको हमने इतनी इज्जत दी हुई है, Booker, Shooker. We now know the agendas behind those prizes. We now, their biases are so exposed now. So why are we still, treating them with the same respect? नजर आ चुका है, तो फिर we should turn our attention away. We should decenter them and
बिल्कुल
all those criteria. और आई थिंक ये जो अभी फरहान ने बात की, इस पे एक्चुअली बातें नहीं, इस पे बहुत काम होना चाहिए. लाइक अभी आई वाज रिसेंटली टीचिंग अ वर्कशॉप, ट्रांसलेशन वर्कशॉप, तो उसमें one of the participants was an art critic, and she took the initiative, and she was a very extroverted bandi. She took the initiative and she created a WhatsApp group for all the translators, and they've been connected on it ever since, and they're giving each other feedback and all. I'm just saying कि community create करना is, कहने को छोटी सी चीज है, but it does so much because it suddenly brings people together on a platform. और आप बजाय इसके कि आप वेट करते जाओ कि आप you pitch to 100 literary journals in the West or 100 publishers in the West जिनके biases से आपको confront करना पड़ेगा, explain करना पड़ेगा, फिर reject होना पड़ेगा. There's got to be a better avenue. There's
Yeah.
got to be a better avenue, and we've got to stop believing that we make it only if our work goes big in the US and the UK markets. हमें पता है कि many of our authors who are darlings of the Western publishing, we cannot, for the most part, identify with their work because it feels like a diluted version of the South Asian experience. And it makes a lot of sense because they've gone so big. Obviously, उन पे pressure होता होगा publisher का, and they have to comply to some extent. So yeah, and I have had honest conversations with very close friends who are South Asian authors. In private spaces, we can trust to say to each other
Yeah.
कि भाई ये जो bestseller है, this is not really doing it for me. I could
Yeah.
not finish it, but it's obviously soaring in the Western market. So that is
Yes.
also a real fact. It's a real truth that you have to confront and get comfortable with.
Yeah.
जरूरी नहीं है कि हर excellent work has to make it big. Maybe it won't. कोई बात नहीं.
Yeah, yeah. I also, Naima, this reminds me of what you said earlier. What is our definition of success, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think, and yeah, also, I'm ready to drop a Google Docs, like action points. Because it's
Seriously,
so
action points. Yeah.
exciting to do things. And just in Pakistan alone, in the last year or two, I've seen places of gathering proliferate, like Kitab Ghar is this brilliant place that's popped up with there's a Karachi space like that in Lahore. And but then also we've seen things that have lasted a very short time, like this amazing bookstore that opened in Lahore, and recently the last word, then because of money, they're having to fold, which is unfortunate. Though it's not that people are not trying. We had this amazing independent press some years ago called Mongrel, run by Shandana Minhas. But again, financial reasons, which are real reasons. I mean, we see big journals by big Simran, like things that have lasted for decades in the West. They have folded in the past few years because of money. Though it's not to say that there's no money in publishing, by the way, because we still see news about Falana writer getting like a 7-figure deal or an 8-figure deal, and you're like, bloody hell,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money. And yes, well, we don't get that, they don't get that in one big chunk. It's done over time, but I'll take it.
You have to write romantasy. That's where the money is
Or you have to
apparently.
write the oppressed South Asian
Oh,
woman.
that is all.
फिर आप telegraphy
With
छोड़ दें.
mangoes.
Telegraphy छोड़ दें. If you want a seven-figure advance, you need to move to the oppressed woman, an acid attack, arranged marriage, and roti. Roti बेलने के लिए. So,
Now
Round
she's making
rotis.
mango chutney, maybe. So,
roti with mango chutney.
Uh,
so the money is there to run these things. We just have to get back on the horse, so to speak, and remember that there are people out there who are still willing to make gathering spaces, make communities here back home. I know of a group that's trying to hopefully shortly get itself off the ground by creating like a very cross ocean book club, in the sense that it's going to be virtual, but they have a brilliant plan for it. And it's amazing. So, and it's all run by younger people who are just eager. But I think that it's very, it's symbolic of how we've always seen people in our places do things. You will always find art, you'll always find theater. Agar aap back home jao, Bangladesh or Pakistan or India, you'll always find people persisting in the art, in theater, in writing, whatever the hell the size of the venue is. ठीक है ना, वो अपना काम कर रहे हैं. They're doing their stuff. Um, so it's not like there's no interest there. There's no talent there. If there were no interest or talent, just Lakir alone would not be receiving applications for our mentorship program. And it's just really great. Every year we get into this was our second year of doing it, and the applications are competitive, which is really cool. We have so like the interest is there. We just have to, like I said, make a Google Docs.
And also, when we are given the power, when we hold power, we have to be accountable. How much responsibility do we take to champion our own voices? Because हमें पता है कि Western titles which are doing phenomenally well in the market, they've already got the marketing push. भाई उन पे लग चुके हैं millions of dollars. They will make it. And I have so many recent titles in experience, which did so well in the market that everyone I know bought it,
yeah.
but not a single person I know, or maybe one or two people I know, actually liked it. They could not read it. So हमें पता है कि Western market में अगर कोई title is doing well, उसके पीछे इतनी बड़ी push है, rest assured people are going to buy it. आपको अगर microphone मिला है या आपको अगर power मिली है, why are you not championing excellence? I'm not saying just because this person is brown. No, no. Be
Yeah.
be be very demanding with your standards, but there's so much excellence. Why are you not championing that? Why are you not using your power to benefit excellence or voices from our part of the world, which could use a little boost? I remember कुछ साल पहले the News on Sunday का एक annual feature होता है, उसमें they ask you what were your favorite reads of a certain year. तो and that was my year when I was reading a lot of South Asian women. तो मैंने सारे titles South Asian women के डाले थे. And I remember when I was sending it, my husband was like, "Why are you just, sending all these titles by South Asian women?" I was like, "Because I was reading these books and because I feel that more people need to know about it." And he was like, "But I think everyone else is going to talk about, Western titles." And मैंने पढ़ी वो list. There were like some 7, 8 authors who were interviewed. Every single one of them had written ye Western titles. And I was like, okay, great. They don't need that boost. They don't need कि आपने एक पाकिस्तान के छोटे से अखबार में उनका नाम. They don't even care. So उनका their matter is taken care of. तो आप अपने उस पर focus करें. So yeah, just very small examples of how you can try and move the needle.
Yeah, my husband was saying we should start up a South Asian publishing, company for South Asian writers. I was like, yeah, I mean, I want to be published.
Do it.
Let's go for it.
Do it, Nadia.
Not self-publishing, but yeah.
Maybe a
Do it.
consortium
Yeah.
where you can publish books as well, but act as a POD for
Yeah.
amazing independent South Asian publishers as well. I mean, that has been my dream to do that, being Dubai being a
Yeah.
melting pot, because we know, books from India cannot travel to
Yeah.
Pakistan and vice versa. So be that point where you can distribute books of different in these countries,
Bilkul.
and people really want to read that. And they
Nadia,
and
sorry.
and Farah, people, publishers are on board. Arpita, Naveen Kishore, Urvashi. We've always spoken about that, to create this consortium, to do something from here, because of, always this distribution demon is, looming
Yeah.
over our heads, and not just distribution, but, the political scenario and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but and Nadia, just it's very early point you said, and it's so true. I didn't realize until you said it that when you go in a bookstore and you see, chalo, your title there, लेकिन उसकी एक copy होती है stuck between things, and so far I've been feeling okay about it. I'm like, oh, look, my book is there. But then you're right. Who the hell's gonna look at कोई बहुत ही devoted follower होगा जो जाके बोलेगा मुझे I want that person's
Yeah,
South Asian
title,
exactly.
and they'll
Stanley
find the
type.
one copy. So, and
For
let's
me,
say like,
going into a bookshop, मेरा सबसे पहला वो होता है कि मैं जाके देखूं साउथ एशियन कौन कौन से साउथ एशियन authors are there, कौन से साउथ एशियन publishers are there, and it's always a disappointment for me.
This is the thing. As a Bangladeshi author, I'll tell you, you'll have sections of Indian authors, Pakistani authors, but there's never a section for Bangladeshi authors in bookshops in the UK. I don't find it. And interestingly, last year I was invited by the Bangladesh High Commission for a literary event, and they had asked me, "Oh, can you connect us with other Bangladeshi authors?" And I was like, "Okay, I know very few." And then I started looking up, and I was like, "Okay, there are these Bangladeshi sort of authors who I didn't even know, to be very honest, that they were Bangladeshi authors." And it was just nice to know that there are. It's a very, very small number, but there are Bangladeshi authors. But the thing is that I think we're even in a more of a minority than Indian, South Asian writers or Pakistani writers. People just don't publish us. And also what I find is, as a Bangladeshi, I mean, a lot of writers and write about the war of independence, and that is fine. If that is what you want to write about, then that's your story to tell. But I just feel that for me, I want to look forward. I want to look forward. I want to write about the diaspora here. I want to write about people who are not just living in Brick Lane or working in a restaurant, or which is very kind of stereotype. And I get tired of that stereotyping. And I would like to have stories by Bangladeshi authors. And there are stories, which I now am finding, that write about different things. I mean, we've got from Bangladesh, we've got Saad Hussein, who writes, he writes fantasy fiction.
I was
He's
going to
written
say he participated last year.
he's a great friend of mine, and he's written, and he's not gone down the route of, and he's incredibly funny. And I think Return to Baghdad was a speculative satire, I think. And then we've got Kia Abdullah here, who's writing, I think, psychological thriller crime. We've got, so we are, people are branching out and not just writing that whole, the War of Independence, or the immigrant story, the hardship story of living, moving to England, and then all the terrible things that happened to them. Because I think we need to move beyond that. And I think otherwise we're actually stereotyping ourselves by playing to the audience, that this is. So I think it's, for me, I want to move away from that and write about, people who, I want to write about people who is, you always think about, oh, Bangladeshis, they live in, this, and, they're all from this part and they don't integrate. And I'm like, there is huge diaspora here. And there are judges, writers, artists, there are, doctors, everything. So I want to write about those people as well if I'm writing about a story in the UK, and I think sometimes we ourselves stereotype ourselves. And I think I would like to move away from that, because I think we feel if we do that, we'll get published. Because like we said, going back to the arranged marriage and mangoes, we feel if we've ticked those boxes, we'll be more marketable. I mean, it's all circular. If we need to break away, and exactly, we need to take back control of the agenda and take back agency.
So
I think we
one,
should write an
yeah.
experimental novel where each of us writes a stereotypical chapter just for the heck of it. You know that
So fun.
that movie that came out?
American fiction?
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I was thinking of
We
that.
need a
Yeah.
South Asian edition for that.
We could
Brilliant.
write that, make a truckload of money, and then start our cool ass press. So
I would
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm signed
I'm in.
up.
Yeah.
Nadia, you can have the mangoes chapter. Sabine, you can have the diasporic conflicty chapter. And Naima and I can talk about
I can talk about the roti that I've never made in my life.
Yeah.
We just should have. We just
I
should
listen,
have.
I'm a mango lover, so I'm happy to go with the mango chapter.
And a Desi Mrs. Dalloway.
Yeah,
but
you're
forever in some
Farah.
philosophical turmoil as she's bailing the rotis.
No, Nadia, you were talking about Bangladeshi authors, and last year, we had specific. So last year we did, a session, a segment on Urdu and Bengali, and during my research, and we actually had a session in Bangla.
cool.
Yes, yes, because we in Saraiki, in Bangla, in
Wow.
Saraiki, and in Urdu. Naima was,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Naima was a huge part of bringing the sessions on the Urdu language, and that is the point of this festival as well. That we're just not talking about English, the English language, or writing in English, which is great as well. But there's so many. And while researching about this segment on Bangla, you realize, I mean, we know, it's always in the background with the movies and the literature, Rabindranath Tagore, even a lot of our amazing Pakistani singers. I've forgotten, my mom's favorite, the 70s singer.
Alamgir, Runa Lela.
Runa Lala,
Runa
yeah.
Lala,
Runa Lala,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, there's so much culture in, when you're like, I was floored when I started researching, because we only know Tagore, right?
Yeah,
Honestly
we have.
speaking,
What a
or
cliche.
Satyajit and Satyajit Ray, right? These are the two people that we really, really know. But when you get down to it, and that is sad, because the literature and the culture, it is so rich and so
Exactly.
immense, and we're not tapping into it.
I think you're right because we have it is I would say Bangladesh, and we have a very, very rich literature, culture, literary culture, I would say, whether in the arts, it's I would say literature, poetry, even theater. It is, but it's all in Bengali. Because it's in Bengali, you feel as if, oh, nobody knows about it. And I think we don't have enough translations of all these amazing works. And I think that's how maybe we can bring Bengali or Bangladeshi writers to the global forefront, by translations. I mean, yes, of course, we have writers who write in English, but that's very different to writers who write in Bengali. And to have them translated, there are lots of works that are translated, but I think we haven't even scratched the surface. So I think you're right. That is that. I think it's the way we can do it is by translations, and but I don't know that there is a lot of, again, money in translations. Coming from Bangladesh. Who's going to publish it? Who's going to distribution? Where are you distributing? Is it going to be? I mean, if it's Bengali work, who is the publisher? If the publisher is a Bangladeshi publisher, they're not going to get the books in the UK or the US. Again, problem of distribution. Whereas if you have a UK publisher, are they actually going to publish it? Very unlikely, because it won't fit the little pigeonhole or
Yeah.
stereotype that.
And and this reminds me of how Seagull books, worked. So Naveen Kishore set up Seagull Books in Calcutta, right? But as their history is that they set up a press or a publishing outlet, if I'm not mistaken completely. They had their London office, so as opposed to an independent publisher setting up their London office so that this distribution issue is not there, and they're very big on translations.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that's I think that's how we get Bangladeshi literature
yeah,
outside Bangladesh. I think the only way is through translations.
yeah, yeah. True. So we're almost at the end of our session, and I'd love it if you could share, an end note. I don't like an end note, but unfortunately, we're about to, end the session. So, Farah, you go first.
Don't really have an end note thing to say, except que I think we need to, I'm just going to repeat myself at the risk of sounding super boring, but we need to make our own places of everything, or work more with places that are existing, not or, but at the same time, work with those that are existing and already trying to do good work. And by good, I mean, out of the mainstream, out of the box kind of work. Whether it's setting up a distribution network for works that already exist, or finding out ways to make ourselves able to competitively pay writers, and so that they're incentivized to do good work, in terms of reviews or whatever. Publicity work for writers that publish stuff, they manage to, but no one hears of them. So there's a lot of work to be done. I remember last year when Deepa Bhasti won the International Booker Prize. Some people were like, "Oh, the tides are changing," but man, the tides are not going to change. It's the same people sitting there, so we have to do our own changes in very big ways. They're not impossible at all if we can make our own spaces. So these are my end note points.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and again, going maybe off topic here, but people were in awe of Vogue when they put Malala on the cover, which of course is great. I'm not saying that wasn't great, but that was, copy selling. So yeah.
Tokenism at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. Naima?
My end note is pull up your socks, or get to work. As Farah said, Google Docs mode. Like, make your communities, and honestly, start reviewing works by your own writers and start championing your own writers. जहाँ जहाँ पे आपको छोटी भी pocket या window नजर आती है, build a community, get people together, and just keep showing up. And I think community is the key word because community is है नहीं खास तौर पे हमारे यहाँ in Pakistan अभी we don't really have a very strong culture of writers, I mean people or citizens supporting each other, forget about writers and everything. So yeah, community, and take back the power that we have given to third people to decide what is good South Asian literature. They don't know better. And yeah, we have the right to disagree. And those conversations that we're having with other authors privately or in secret, ke, actually, I do not like this bestseller. We should not have to whisper. It's okay. It's selling in the West because people are buying because of the marketing push, but it just simply does not ring true or authentic. I
Yeah.
hate that word, but so yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Whose fragile egos are we protecting?
Exactly. Exactly.
I think Naima, you and I have had various conversations about books.
I'm not the only one, Nadia. Can we be honest here, please? Hello? सारा प्रेशर मेरे ऊपर डाल रहे हैं आप लोग.
नहीं नहीं हम दोनों I said we both of us we've
जी,
had
जी.
no yeah I agree with both of you. I think going forward actually yeah it's all about creating a community and also creating that support for writers, each other, and not just writers. I think it's writers, poets, translators, building that community, taking back control. And I think one thing is that, we're always told how we're supposed to write if we're writing in English. And I just think actually, thanks to history, English does not belong to any one nation anymore. And that, it belongs to anyone who writes in it. Therefore, that's a form of taking control. So if I'm writing in English, then I guess I will write in the way that I want to, and other writers should have the freedom to write the way that they want to, even though it is in English, and even if it means putting in different words of different languages and having idioms from different cultures, or using sensibilities or using time in the way they want to. So I think yeah, we should have the freedom to do that without constantly being pushed back and told what to write and how to write it.
Can I
It's a
end on a
revolution going on
can I
here.
end with a slight joke here after an
Yeah.
extremely serious and heavy conversation? Abhi मैं Instagram पे देख रही थी, there was a Chinese बंदी, she was singing an Indian song. तो caption थी, the Chinese have done to Indian music what the Indians have done to Chinese cuisine. So you know
That's true.
Pakistani Chinese is a thing, bhai.
I
We
love
have
it.
it
Can you
I
exactly.
love
We
erase
it.
have
that?
it. Yeah, me
No,
too. We have Bangladeshi Chinese.
of
Exactly.
course.
I know what you mean.
जब कोई चाइनीज आके खाएगा तो परेशान हो जाएगा कि हैं ये
Yeah,
so
yeah. What is this?
it exists, it's beautiful, it works for us.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you so much for all that. दिमाग में अभी भी, there's so many things, we can go on forever. But I will be making a Google Docs, Farah.
Excellent.
And definitely will be getting in touch because whenever we have these conversations that just gives me an incentive to do something. Hopefully kuch nikal aaye. This Lit Fest has been happening thanks to all of you for the past 7 years with no money at all, but still it is happening. And people come in, share amazing stories and build up collaborations and friendships and relationships. So I think we're doing something right. If, not everything, from my perspective, not everything is about money or I mean, we can scale with, money, but I feel, our success, it lies in the fact that we are creating this space for all of us and creating narratives. I hope we're doing that. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Sabine, for organizing Ananke and doing all this amazing work. You built an amazing community. So thanks to you. And thank you for inviting us back over and over.
No, a
It's
pleasure.
just been wonderful.
A pleasure having you all. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, Sabine, and
Thank you,
everyone.
Sabine, Nadia, Farah. Bye-bye.
Lovely to see you. Bye.
Bye.